Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Blitz5, and I hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about frame rates for PUBG console, going over some of my opinion about this, talking about the recent PUBG news, next generation stuff, next gen, and a few other things. I want to just make this a casual video, just talking about my opinion and also the kind of the current state of the game, but most specifically around frame rates and again, next gen. Also, make sure you guys stick around to the end of the video because I ran some tests between the PTS and the live server. So between 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. And I wanted to see what you guys thought about it and if you noticed any differences. I'll try to leave some timestamps below so you guys can skip ahead if you want to. Before we get into this video, I'll let you guys know that this was recorded on October 27, 2020. I'm playing on the live server, so this is just in 30 frames per second. This is not in 60 frames on the PTS, which is going live in just 2 days. We'll have that update for anyone that has a Xbox One X or PS4 Pro. And I'm currently playing on the Xbox One X with an SSD just in 1080p. And I'm watching this gameplay back and I was like, you know, this looks pretty good. But if you've seen the 60 frames per second for PUBG, I mean, it looks so much better. It's actually kind of hard to go back and play on 30 frames. And the difference is huge. It's kind of hard to explain it unless you just play. Almost everything seems, you know, it seems clear. It seems easier for me to aim. It seems easier for me to track targets. It's easier to move around with your general sensitivity, look left and right, to drive. I honestly think it's easier just to drive in 60 frames per second. And it makes sense, right? Because we've doubled the amount of frames. And it's not like we're dealing with some increase here where it's like, oh, you're going from 160 frames to 190. No, we're going from 30, which is way lower than what people play on, especially with PC, to 60, which is like a normal frame rate at least. So obviously, the difference there is bigger because it's on the lower end of the spectrum. When on the higher end, you kind of get diminishing returns because just going up 10 more doesn't really make as big of a difference, right? So to me, it just affects so many different things. And I'm really looking forward to this to drop on console on the live server, which is going to be dropping just in 2 days, which is nice. But unfortunately, it's only going to be for the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro users for right now. And PUBG put out a statement about next gen, answering all these questions. So let's just kind of talk about it. And I'm not breaking this news. This came out on Monday. And I wasn't sure if I was going to make a video about it because so many people were upset about it. And really the post kind of spoke for itself. But then after thinking about it a little bit more and sitting on it, I kind of figured I wanted to share my thoughts on what I think is going to happen. Kind of the future of PUBG. So right now, PUBG announced that it is going to be playable on the next gen consoles, which makes sense. A lot of people were worried about that and asking me a lot of questions. Will it be playable? And I thought that was a weird question because Xbox, I know at least, is doing a lot for backwards compatibility. So why wouldn't it be playable on the next gen consoles? But you never know, I guess. It's nice that PUBG put out an official statement. I guess now the only thing we have to worry about is our accounts going to transfer over? Is it going to work okay? There's going to be crossplay now between a bunch of different consoles. So hopefully there's no incompatibility issues or that might create more desync or more glitches. Who knows? But right now people are already playing PUBG with the new Xbox. So there's some people, I saw some footage of a guy playing on the Xbox Series X. He played like one game of PUBG. So obviously they're testing it out. He was doing this on the live server before there were 60 frames. I was going to make a video saying, hey, this is the first Xbox Series X gameplay, but I just didn't think it was good to show that off because it wasn't in 60 frames yet with the live update. So I just feel like that's not a good way to show the game because it doesn't look that much different, right? But I will show that footage here for you guys. This is, I forget who this was. I apologize. I put the text on the screen. Someone from my stream gave me a heads up. His name like Tom Warren or something like that this guy was playing. Shout out to the Fink that this guy was playing on the Xbox Series X. So there's people that are testing. There's probably people that work at PUBG or maybe Microsoft that are actually testing out the games, making sure they work. I'm sure they tested out that crossplay would work. So who knows? You could have taken out somebody that was on the next gen console, which is kind of cool. And obviously going to be fun to play on. But then PUBG kind of dropped a bomb saying that the next gen consoles are going to have the same quality as the current Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro. So if you have a PS5, you're going to have the same quality as a PS4 Pro. So if you want the 60 frames per second, you're going to have to play with 1080p, 60 frames. And if you want 4K, you're going to have to go back to 30 frames per second. So a lot of people in the community right now are bummed about this, especially if you're playing on 4K. Now you have to decide, do you want to remain in 4K or do you want to experience the additional frames? For people like me that never played in 4K, I don't really have a huge, change because I've always been playing in 1080p. But this is definitely something that's that's super unfortunate, and I think a lot of people were expecting a little bit more. But PUBG, and then the worst news, or the worst, to come from all this stuff, was that the Xbox Series S will actually not even be able to perform at 60 frames because it will be going off the Xbox One S build. And that's definitely really disappointing to hear. And I've already heard a few people mention that they've canceled their pre-orders for the Series S. And it totally makes sense to me, because if you only play PUBG and you're not getting any increase of performance right now, why would you pay for it? You'd at least wait until that is available. Obviously, there's other games that you could play that will be optimized for the Series X or Series S, excuse me, the new releases and stuff like that. But we're kind of just speaking for strictly PUBG players here. So that's definitely not great news. And one thing about that post that kind of bummed me out was that there was no news that was new to me that was good. They tried to say that, it's playable the next gen and all this stuff. But to me, I already kind of assumed all this stuff. And all of the new things that I found out were negative. So I don't know if that was confusing when I worded that. But that was definitely a bummer. But overall, now that we've got all this kind of negative stuff out of the way, I really feel like that just thinking about this one thing at a time and kind of PUBG doing a stepping stone. Let's go back to the way, PUBG launched. Let's all imagine the way that we first played PUBG or saw footage of it on console. Play-Doh buildings, crazy issues, couldn't even play one match without crashing. To where it's at today with new content, it's been optimized. I know there's still issues, but it's a lot better, especially if you're on the better hardware. And then let's now, one step forward now is with the 60 frames per second. So hopefully PUBG can continue to work on this stuff, get the old consoles to 60 frames per second. Then maybe they can move the Series X or the Series S even farther if it's possible. Who knows? They could be working on this stuff simultaneously. It could be the next project. I know people want to see all this stuff now, and of course I would too. PUBG always seems to be a little bit slow on this stuff. And I say this so many times, it's better late than never. But in this case, I just hope that eventually it's available. And again, sooner the better. But I guess it's just what we're dealing with. So it's kind of crazy to think about all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I just want to see the game performing well. That's my goal for PUBG, or my wish for PUBG, is that by the end of this year, 60 frames per second, the game is performing well and people are enjoying the game and having less issues, and then go up from there, even though I know a lot of people out there are really disappointed about the resolution. And then to end the video out here, I mentioned in the beginning that I have some clips that I did in training mode where I tested out a bunch of different guns. I'm just going to show you guys 3 different ones here. I'm going to show the Micro Uzi, the DBS, and the S12K. And when I was saying that the game to me feels better just playing in 60 frames per second, I feel like that's kind of obvious. But there's something to me that I can't really prove with the frames that makes it to me easier to shoot weapons, especially those that have a faster fire rate. The only way I could kind of explain this, and I mentioned it in another video, so I'm kind of repeating myself here, and I've been talking about it a lot on stream, is that when you shoot weapons like the Micro Uzi and the Vector, you're shooting basically 33, 35 bullets in about 1.5 to 2 seconds. So previously that's happening in 30 frames, and now that's happening in 60 frames. When you shoot, it just seems a lot more clean. And even on the old console, sometimes when I shot the Micro Uzi on my original Xbox, it felt like the whole console lagged. We're not talking about connection lag. I'm talking about like game lag from the hardware. And with the 60 frames per second and the higher optimization, it feels like shooting these guns is way more crisp. But when I look back at the footage, I really couldn't see anything too conclusive. It almost looked like there was less recoil on the Micro Uzi. Take a look at that. And other than that, it just seemed a little bit more smooth, but it didn't seem like that crazy. But I wonder if you slowed the footage down, if maybe you could see more of the bullets being shot or something like that. I don't really know. But either way, when you play with 60 frames per second, if you haven't already, you will definitely notice the difference. And if you've already played, I would love to hear what you guys think, barring the screen tearing, which is getting fixed. And also, I'd love to hear what you guys think about the news with resolution and all this stuff, and how big of a deal this is for you guys. And I guess I'll see you down in the comments below. So as always, if you made it this far, thank you all for watching. I'm Blitz5, and peace out.